Well, you know, it's very interesting. I was born in 1969. I'm a 1969 child. And I was born 5 months and a day after the May 13th riots. October 14th, 1969, I was born. And I come, of course, from a very multiracial and cosmopolitan background. My father is Chinese, my mother is Indian. I was raised by a woman who lived with us who was Malay. You know, I have been nurtured in that kind of environment. So the concept of a fragile nation has always been with us. My father, of course, is a professor of history, a well-known professor of history, and one of the initial nation builders, if I might say. You know, and we were very much raised according to that kind of consciousness, respect, and empathy for and openness to all other cultures and languages. So we're also pretty multilingual and so on. I, of course, grew to maturity during two very interesting periods in the nation's development, which was the 1990s, which was a period of great wealth, great confidence, the beginnings of a culture of openness, perhaps. And then, of course, the following 10 years, following the fall and ouster of Anwar Ibrahim, which was basically a period of tremendous questioning and searching about who we were as a nation and who we are as a people, and what we actually stand for and what we actually represent. And you know, we've I think become more aware that in the process of maturing and prioritizing certain concerns over other concerns, we have come to lose a lot. In particular, on the more abstract, formless aspects of our collective life. That is, you know, what is our history, who we are as a people, what is our sense of self. So I've been through these two periods. We're still working out the latter part of it, but I think it's necessary for the country, when you're 53 years old, to begin to ask those fundamental questions. I think we are in a period now where a large majority of people, whether they express it rightly or not, are basically in the process of wanting renewal. We were very naive approaching independence, and we were also very romantic in our approach to independence. Now, as much as we say that we had a struggle for Merdeka, I would be a little cautious in how we use the term struggle. We had no struggle in the way that India had struggled. We had no way in the way that Indonesia had struggled. We had really had no armed struggle. We had an insurrection, we had an emergency, but that's not really a popular armed struggle. So we did not actually have the tradition and the language of nationalist movements such as our neighbors in Indonesia and then further neighbors in India, where an actual language for nationhood is shaped, you see. We inherited basically a nation that provided us a great deal of stability. We inherited parliamentary systems, we inherited properly functioning infrastructure, we inherited an economy that basically we just had to administer according to the rules that had already been set. What essentially we saw in 1969 was shock and panic, and essentially us unable to have, or rather we didn't have the tools to conduct a really forensic and deep engagement with what actually went wrong. And of course, a lot of the time we didn't tell the truth about it, so you know, it's just people panicked, they were in shock, and they came together to formulate all these policies that have since also been cynically interpreted. So a lot of what has happened in Malaysia, I think, is a result of misinterpretation, a great deal of political cynicism, and of course the hand of politics in every single aspect of Malaysian life, which was accentuated, by the way, during the Mahathir administration.
Cynically, could this actually is a delay mechanism? For example, okay, for any new nation, that there must be this period of absolute turmoil before it can progress to nationhood. And what we've done is, by getting our independence relatively easy, that we've actually delayed the inevitable. and that we are now moving towards that inevitability?
Well, that's a marvelous question, and it's also one of the timeless questions that social scientists and philosophers have to deal with. How is it that coincidentally, it is through civil strife that intellectual traditions are born, for example? And by intellectual tradition, I mean not just academics sitting in universities analyzing things, but I'm talking about novelists, I'm talking about culturalists, people who are able to create a literary and intellectual tradition that is deeply rooted in the functioning of their society. That's one of the great paradoxes, that somehow in societies with civil strife, you actually create people of this kind. Malaysians, I think, on the whole, are very accepting of things. I would categorically say that we do not have a very strong intellectual tradition as a result of not, I think, committing ourselves deeply enough to working through the complexities and the complex problems of our society. So we are always looking towards leadership. That is not the hallmark of a truly independent nation that has, for example, gone through civil strife, because you don't have the advantage of looking towards leadership to provide the answers. So you have in Indonesia the Pramoedya Anantaturs and so on, who have been working out these questions for a tremendously long period of time, suffering very much in the process. I'm not advocating any kind of turmoil or strife, but what I'm saying is that I think you're right. There comes a point when society reaches the precipice, and it really has to ask very fundamental questions about itself. Today, we have a relatively more open society. We have actually voted for change, and now that we're living through that period of change, the one thing that we must acknowledge is that we don't actually have a language to rationalize that transition, to make sense of it, and to dialogue with each other. We do not possess a language to do that, you see. 10 years from now, I hope we will be talking about pretty much the same things, but that the things that surround us would have matured, would have a lot more lyricism, I hope, and that the younger generation of people would be able to make the right choices, for one thing, and to be able to conduct a dialogue with ourselves. You see, nations must always quarrel with themselves. There's no other way. Nations are never perfect. They are constantly in becoming. And what that means is you don't just have to talk to yourself, you have to quarrel with yourselves very often, you see. But we must be able to have the instruments to do that. We must be able to have the spirit of openness to do that. So I don't think we'll actually be talking about anything else. It's just how will we be talking, and in the midst of what will we be talking? I think that is the important question. Quite a bit of material has come up that is very interesting now in terms of the choices that we have. You look at a person like a person that interests me in political life, for example, is Nick Nazmi in Selangor. I've read his book, Moving Forward. Now, he's very characteristic of the experience of the Malays over the past 35 years, 40 years, a civil servant's son in Kelantan and so on. An individual who could have easily opted to go the conventional way of joining UMNO clubs in London and so on, but after the Anwar episode really decided to rethink everything that he is about as an individual, as a culture, and as a now, I do believe that a lot more people are doing this, and so that gives me a sense of confidence. What we also cannot have, I have great love and respect for older people. I mix with them all the time in Kelantan, incredibly rich. I think our Tua Kutuk leaders, they really need to be pushed aside, because these people really have nothing to offer but cynicism and bitterness, and I think we should do the best thing. We should completely, in our minds, in our spirits, and as a collective, we should completely neutralize them. So let them talk to their own selves, let them talk to the air. But I think we really got to arrive at a point where we look at Dr. Mahathir and really just quite yawn, because there's nothing there. Absolutely nothing.